Welcome to Singapore Property Talk Live. I'm Damien.
And I'm Serene.
And today we're diving deep into something that's been
Yeah.
making a lot of news recently.
Making waves, literally.
Yeah, literally making waves. Flooding in Singapore. I think we've all seen the news recently.
Yeah,
It's hard to miss.
definitely.
We're going to unpack what's been happening, why certain areas seem to be
Yeah.
more affected,
More prone.
and importantly, what this could mean for you if you own property or are thinking of buying.
Yeah. I think it's such a hot topic, and it raises some really important questions about, where we choose to live
Right.
and where we invest.
Absolutely.
So let's look at what the data tells us.
Yeah, let's get into that. So we had a series of significant rainfall events recently.
Yeah.
Just think about the last few months. The Straits Times highlighted 3 flash floods.
Mm-hmm.
One on December 29th, impacting areas like Dunnern
Right.
and Balmoral Road.
Yeah.
Another in November, affecting Nishan and Potong Pasir. And back in October, Western Singapore,
Yeah.
including Yuanqing Road,
Yeah.
saw some significant flooding.
Right.
It feels like it's becoming more frequent.
It does. And the number 2024 was the wettest we've seen since 1980.
Wow.
And that downpour on December 29th, the 134.6 millimeters of rain in the central region put it in the top 1% of maximum daily rainfall record since 1978.
So that's
That's an extraordinary amount of water hitting us all at once. Almost half the average monthly rainfall for December in a single day.
That's a huge amount of rain.
Yeah,
And it hasn't stopped there.
it hasn't.
We saw that monsoon surge in March, as
Yeah.
reported by CNA,
Right.
where Jurong West got a massive 318 millimeters of rain. That's more than their entire average for the whole month of March.
Wow.
Even eastern Singapore saw nearly 300 millimeters. That led to those images of flooding at Mountbatten Road.
Yeah.
And Jalen Seaview, I even saw that photo
Oh.
on Stomp
Mm-hmm.
of someone knee-deep in water near Marina Bay. It makes you wonder what's going on. Is this just a run of bad luck, or is there something bigger at play here?
Well, the immediate cause, as Pooh has explained, is often simply that extremely heavy rainfall over a short period overwhelms our drainage capacity.
Right.
Our systems are designed for certain levels, and these intense bursts can exceed those limits.
Right.
But if we look at the broader context,
Okay.
we have the ongoing northeast monsoon season,
Right.
which usually winds down by late January, and the potential influence of La Nina. La Nina tends to bring more rain to our region,
Right.
and it's expected to potentially return between now and March.
So it's like we're getting hit by multiple weather systems.
Precisely. And then we have to consider the long-term trends. The Singapore Climate Change Study has some concerning predictions.
Okay.
They anticipate heavier, more intense, and more frequent storms in the future. This unfortunately suggests that these kinds of flash flooding events could become more common.
More frequent.
It's also interesting that the late monsoon surge in March is a bit out of the ordinary and seems to be linked to those warmer sea surface temperatures associated with La Nina.
Okay, so that paints a pretty clear picture. More rain more often. So given these recent events and the forecast, where are the parts of Singapore that are historically more prone to flooding or have become recent hotspots?
Yeah.
If I'm looking at buying property,
Yeah.
these are definitely areas I'd want to know about.
That's a crucial question for any property owner or buyer, and thankfully we have some data on this.
Okay.
Stacked Homes put together a fairly comprehensive list of areas that have been identified as either flood-prone or as recent hotspots. Now, it's important to understand the distinction.
Okay.
PUB generally defines flood-prone areas as low-lying locations that have a history of flooding.
Okay.
Hotspots, on the other hand, might not be traditionally low-lying, but have experienced flash floods recently due to intense rainfall. PUB has even zoned around 700 properties in areas like Beach Road, Lorong Buangkok, and parts of Hugang as being in these higher risk zones.
Okay, so let's dive into some of these locations.
Yeah.
Stacked Homes mentioned a fair number.
Yes. The list includes places like Senate Estate, Meyer Road,
Okay.
surprisingly given its reputation,
Right.
Tiong Bahru River Valley, and the eastern end of Bukit Timah. We also see Queenstown Alexandra Road, Jervois Road, Bishopsgate Road, and Admiralty Road West near the Sembawang shipyard on that list.
It's interesting to see some traditionally prime areas,
Yeah.
like Maya Road
Yeah.
and Bukit Timah mentioned. What makes them more susceptible? Is it the terrain?
I think it's a combination of factors. In areas like Bukit Timah, the natural topography plays a role,
Okay.
with some lower-lying pockets and a history of being a natural drainage path. Overdevelopment in some areas might also have altered natural drainage patterns
Oh,
for coastal areas like Meyer Road.
Yeah.
The low elevation above sea level,
Right.
combined with intense rainfall and high tides, can create a higher risk of flooding.
Yeah.
The specific design and capacity of the older drainage systems in some of these more established areas might also be a contributing factor compared to newer developments with more advanced drainage solutions.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Older infrastructure might not be designed for the intensity of rainfall we're seeing now.
Yeah.
Let's get back to that list from Stacked Homes.
Yeah.
There were quite a few more areas, right?
Absolutely. The list continues with Beach Road, Bedok South Road, and Avenue 1 Chincheng Avenue, Commonwealth Avenue Drive, and Queensway, and even a section with CTE near the Moulmein Road Slip Road,
Wow.
the Farrer Park area, including Thompson and Derbyshire Roads, the Hong Ha area, and Indus Road, and various parts of the Jalan Besar area, like Jalan Bening Kapal and Jalan Mashor are also noted.
It's quite a widespread issue geographically, isn't it?
It is. Other locations include Jalan Mat Jambal, Jalan Seaview and Tanjong Katong Road South, Jalan Taman King George's Avenue, the Langsat Road area, Lorong Buangkok again, Lorong H. Tela Kurau near Siglap Canal, Lower Delta Road and Alexander Road, Margaret Drive and Tanglin Road, and a significant stretch around Meyer Road, Fort Road, Arthur Road, Margate Road, Ramsgate Road and Mimosa Walk, even Minduf's Changi Camp. Off Farnborough Road, Neo Pitek Lane and Pasir Panjang Road, New Upper Changi Road near Chai Hang Garden, Rose Lane, Second Chinbi Road, a service road off Tampines Road near Jalan Teliti, Stevens Road, and Balmoral Road, which we know was affected recently,
Right.
Southbridge Road, North Canal Road, Upper Hoking Street, Upper Pickering Street, Upper East Coast Road at the junction with Parbury Avenue, Waterloo Street, Albert Street, McCoolin Street, Prinsep Street, and Zion Road.
That's an incredibly expensive list.
It is.
It's quite eye-opening to see how many different parts of the island have experienced flooding.
Mm-hmm.
So if we know these areas are more prone, how does this actually impact the property market in these locations? If you're trying to sell a place in one of these areas or looking to buy this, is crucial information.
This is where things get really interesting for property values. The increasing frequency and severity of floods could definitely make properties in these identified areas less attractive to some buyers. If buyers are concerned about potential damage, insurance costs, and the general inconvenience of flooding, demand could soften in those locations, potentially leading to a downward pressure on prices.
So that beautiful condo with a sea view on Meyer Road might not command the same premium if buyers are increasingly aware of the flood risk in that area.
Right.
It creates a conflict between the desirability of the location and the potential for disruption.
Exactly. And it's not just about location. The type of property also matters.
Right.
The Stacked Homes article highlighted that older properties, particularly those built before the 1980s, when flood control measures were less advanced, tend to be more vulnerable.
Right.
Landed homes, especially older ones, and those with basements also face a higher risk. And naturally, ground floor units in any type of development are more susceptible to flood damage.
So if you own an older landed property in a flood-prone area, you might see a bigger impact on its market value compared to a newer elevated condo in the same vicinity.
That's a likely scenario. Potential buyers will also be factoring in the cost of home contents insurance, which will likely be higher in flood-prone areas, and the potential expenses for cleaning up after a flood.
Yeah.
These are all costs that could influence their willingness to pay a certain price for a property.
On the flip side, we know PB is investing heavily in upgrading our drainage infrastructure.
Yes, they are.
They've put in billions over the past decade and have another significant sum earmarked for the coming years, including major projects like the Bukit Tama Canal widening.
Right.
Could these efforts help to mitigate the negative impact on property values in the long run?
They certainly aim to. If PIBID upgrades are effective in reducing the frequency and severity of flooding in these areas, it could definitely help to restore buyer confidence and stabilize or even increase property values over time.
Okay.
However, the immediate perception of risk based on recent events can still have a significant impact on buyer sentiment in the short to medium term. It's a bit of a wait-and-see situation.
So what can property owners and potential buyers actually do to prepare for this increasing flood risk beyond just being aware of the vulnerable areas?
There are several proactive steps. POB is actively working on infrastructure improvements and also conducts public awareness campaigns, providing information and even distributing flood protection equipment
Oh,
like flood bags in some areas. Property owners themselves can play a role by ensuring that drains within their property are clear and well maintained,
uh,
considering installing their own flood barriers,
uh,
especially for ground level access points.
and keeping an eye on pubs' flood alerts would be crucial too, right?
Absolutely. PO uses social media and messaging platforms to issue timely flood alerts.
Okay.
They're also collaborating with transport companies
Right.
to get these alerts out to a wider audience. For buyers, as the Stacked Homes article suggests, looking at newer developments that incorporate elevated foundations and better floodproofing measures could be a smart choice,
Right.
especially if they're considering properties in areas with a known flood risk.
So it really boils down to being informed, taking preventative measures where possible,
Yeah.
and considering the flood risk as a key factor
Hmm.
when making property decisions, especially in the areas we've discussed.
Precisely. Understanding these risks and the ongoing efforts to manage them is essential for navigating Singapore's property market in a changing climate.
So you see, while Singapore is actively working to tackle the issue of flooding, it's clearly becoming a more significant factor to consider,
Hmm.
especially when it comes to property. Knowing which areas are more susceptible and understanding the potential risks is vital for making informed decisions.
We've covered a lot today from the recent floods and their underlying causes to the specific areas that are more prone
Yeah.
and the potential consequences for property prices. We hope this deep dive into the information has given you a much clearer understanding.
For your own consideration, take some time to look over that list of flood-prone areas. If you're thinking about buying property, it would be wise to investigate the flood history of that specific location and the measures that are in place. How might the increasing likelihood of these events influence your long-term property plans
Yeah.
and even your insurance choices?
It's definitely something to think about.
That's definitely something worth pondering. Join us next time on Singapore Property Talk Live for more valuable insights into the local property market.